All right, y'all, the next storyteller drove an hour and a half to be with us. I'm just saying. M. Root is an avid reader who uses books to procrastinate about the stories she wants to write herself. When she's not tending her children or bemoaning current politics, she can be found in her garden with her dogs or cuddling her husband or her cats. Let's welcome M. Root up to the stage.
I thought finding parking in Columbia was going to be the scariest part, but no, this is definitely the scariest part. One of the most important lessons I've ever learned in my life came from an unexpected place. So picture it. 7th grade, 6th period, Mrs. Huntley's drama class. We were studying improv, and Miss Huntley announced that today we're doing an exercise. Joy. We were paired up, and we were going to be given a prompt from a hat and 30 seconds in which to prepare before performing a 2-minute skit. I was paired with my friend Amber, and when our turn finally came, we waited very nervously to see what our torture was going to be. Finally, Miss Huntley said, "A mother and her teenage daughter fighting over the daughter's friends." Whew. Easy. We got lucky. This was something we could do. We were both daughters. We had mothers. There was material to draw upon. So I was going to be the mother. Obviously, I was always the mother. It didn't matter if it was on the playground in elementary school or reading dialogue in Spanish class. If I was a mother, if there was a mother, it was me. Now, in part that's because I've always been taller than everyone else, and in part because everyone thinks I'm serious because of early onset resting bitchy face. So Miss Huntley called us to action, and we started off slow, and then she's like, "No, you're not supposed to be discussing, you're supposed to be arguing." So we pick it up, and I told Amber, "If you live under my roof, you're going to follow my rules." And she stomped her foot, and she said, "Well, maybe I don't want to live under your roof. Maybe I hate it here, and I hate you." And without thinking, I grabbed the closed stapler off of Mrs. Huntley's desk. I grabbed Amber's poem, and I slapped it down in her palm. And putting as much disgust into my voice as a 12-year-old can muster, I said, "Well, there's the phone. DSS is on speed dial. Call them to pick you up. At least I won't have to put up with you anymore." And just like that, everything stopped. The wiggling of my classmates in their seats, the sound of Mrs. Huntley's pen across the grading sheet. It all stopped suddenly dead as they processed what I just said. The looks of horror on Amber and Mrs. Huntley's faces were enough to clue me in that I had gone into unexpected territory. Nobody could have anticipated this. We stumbled out of my faux pas, mostly due to Amber's ability to draw upon her parents' divorce, and we wrapped up our 2 minutes very relieved to stilted applause. And as I sat at my desk through the rest of the skits, I realized that line that had horrified everyone else and that I had heard dozens of times as my mother threatened my older siblings with it, or even threatened to call herself on my younger brother and I when we were bad or didn't listen or didn't do what we were supposed to, maybe that wasn't something other kids heard. Maybe that wasn't something other mothers said. Like all children, I saw what I saw in my family, and I let it shape my view of the world around me. I assumed we were normal. Other people might be richer or smarter or taller or thinner or whatever, but deep down I believed we were all normal, all the same. But after the reaction I got in that class, I realized maybe this wasn't normal. Maybe other mothers didn't yell at their children like that. Maybe they didn't cuss and scream. And if I was just repeating what my mother said, maybe I had a choice. So there I was, 12 years old, questioning my entire upbringing. Mrs. Huntley at the end of class called me to her desk and asked what had happened there. And I told her, I opened my mouth and my mother came out. She looked at me so sad, and she said, "Well, do you know what to do about that?" I shook my head. Of course I didn't. She said, "It's all about table manners. Next time, chew better and swallow if you need to." We take a script with us that we learn in childhood. And here I was trying to deviate from that script that I had heard my whole life. And in no place is it harder than mothering my own children. I was only 19 when I met my husband and 22 when I had my first child. I'd only had 3 years away from my own mother to build patterns of behavior that were better. Now, that's not to say my mother was absolutely horrible. She did some things right and she did some things wrong. She was often angry with reason because her life had not gone the way it was expected, but plenty of people are angry and they don't act like that. And I decided I was not going to act like that. A couple of kids and a couple of years into my marriage, I was on the phone with my husband when my older boys went screaming through the house. And I yelled at them, and something I'd heard through my entire childhood popped out. My boys luckily did not hear me over their own chaos, but my husband did. And knowing this story, he said, "What happened?" I told him, I opened my mouth, and my mother came out. His simple reply was, "Table manners, dear." I do not know if it is my nature to be kind. Kindness was not something that was demonstrated on a regular basis in my childhood. But despite that, I choose to be kind. Forgiveness is not something that was readily on example in my childhood. Yet despite that, I choose to be forgiving when it is warranted, and better yet, to ask forgiveness when it is needed. I was not raised to tease my children into good behavior. When I find my mother's words coming out of my mouth, I've learned to turn them so that instead of threatening to slap my children silly if they don't stop, I threaten to tickle them. Instead of threatening to smack them upside the head, I threaten to smack them with a pillow. And we have a lot of pillow fights in our house, and I'm outnumbered, and they often win. The lessons I have learned and chosen for myself and my family, despite the examples and nurturing that I received as a child, are so hard-won and so desperately needed, so that when I do make mistakes, I can stop and chew and swallow if need be. Thank you.